Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you guys once again for joining the 9 Innings podcast hosted by yours truly, Kevin Thompson, founder and CEO of Untitled Capital Group. Thank you guys for joining. As I always say, subscribe to the channel. As I always say, go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@unitedcapitalgroup.com. Send us your questions. Go to the website at www.unitedcapitalgroup.com. Schedule an appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, engage, and also entertain. Follow us on all social media channels at NineICap or at MLB to CFP. Today, we're talking about what just occurred. The OBBBA, the big beautiful bill, whatever we want to call it. There's 5 things I want you guys to consider and really think about from the big beautiful bill and how it can impact you. You know what, guys? Let's get it. So we've all heard the headlines. We've seen the headlines. The big beautiful bill. He signed it and he was on the lawn doing his dance. And again, that's great. My job is not to politicize this or go one direction or the other. My job is to help understand what a lot of this stuff means. So we're going to talk about 5 key components that I believe are very impactful from the bill. The first one being the $6,000 senior deduction. So the new $6,000 senior deduction for people 65 and up, that's $12,000 for a married couple filing jointly. That's on top of the standard deduction. That's pretty powerful. This isn't a minor tweak. This is a big deal for retirees who rely on Social Security. But again, where's the trade-off? There is a specific number in there that's going to get the most benefit out of this. Traditionally, people who are bringing in between $100,000 to $200,000 a year can possibly see a nice little savings from this. I was doing some back end math, and if a person was making $150,000, and let's just say they're max Social Security earners, and they make $150,000 max Social Security earners, they can see a savings of roughly $1,700 to $2,000 a year from this benefit. Now, for them, that may not be that big of a deal, maybe $1,000 a year. But again, that helps offset some of the higher Medicare premiums, helps offset some of the higher, medical costs that we're receiving. Now, it's not necessarily going to offset it entirely because, as you know, healthcare costs are going up 5 to 7% a year, and it's hard to offset that inflationary wise. But again, that is powerful. There's one caveat in this. I'm always concerned about the Social Security Trust Fund. As you know, in the Social Security Trust Fund, the CRFB said this change alone could bring the acceleration of the trust fund depletion a year closer from 2033 to 2032. So yes, it's tax relief today, but what's going to happen to the trust fund in the future? That is still up in the air. I am very concerned because we're continually finding ways to bring down the trust fund, whether it be the WEP or GPO the abolishment of that, or finding new ways to take money out of the Social Security system versus putting money back in to fund the system. I'm assuming that's going to be left to the next administration. But again, this is a boon for seniors. Now, the Triple B was billed as small business. Now, I want you to understand that the majority of small business in the United States doesn't have 100 or more employees. The majority of small business in the United States have less than 10. 90% or more have less than 10 employees working, quote unquote. That's the typical small business. And a lot of the bill is not necessarily pushed towards those types of small businesses. But there is one key point that's going to come out towards manufacturing, which is bonus depreciation. Bonus depreciation returns, and it's more powerful. Again, although bonus depreciation isn't new, the bill restores 100% expensing through 2029 for qualifying capital investments. So if you're a business owner buying heavy equipment, vehicles, or tech infrastructure, this is a major win. You can write it off immediately. No long depreciation schedules. But let's be real, this doesn't help everyone, like I mentioned. If you're a solo consultant or a service provider without big capital expenditures, this might sound good, but nothing to do with you or your return. Also, let's not ignore the price tag. This provision is one of the most expensive in the bill, costing tens of billions of dollars of lost revenue a year. But the beauty about this, especially from a tax perspective, people don't realize that although you depreciate something and you do that more quickly, once you sell that business, you don't necessarily get to forego the capital or the capital gain on that investment. So for example, if I have a manufacturing equipment, I depreciated it down to zero. Let's just say 10 years later, it has a residual value of X, Y, or Z. Well, if I depreciated it to zero and has a residual value, there is a capital gain or a gain on that investment. So we have to understand that just because we depreciate it, there is a cost to that once we sell our business or sell our practice. So again, not all depreciation goes to zero. You never pay on it, because guess what? There will always be the tax man cometh on those types of businesses. But again, you are able to depreciate it and take that full depreciation schedule much sooner, according to this bill. Now, I said I know I wasn't going to get into politics, and I try to keep it apolitical. I want my channel to be completely apolitical because I don't want to sway anyone's opinions one way or the other. I want people to do their own due diligence and go in and find out what works for them by just reading and understanding legislation. I try to bring the legislation in and help put a good layman's terms on a lot of these topics. Number 3, I'm going to say, was SALT cap being raised to $40,000. Now, we understand why the SALT cap was reduced, because you wanted to hurt the blue states. We get all that. New York, California, high tax environments, and we wanted to make sure that those states felt the lost revenue, and they did. So the SALT cap raise is going to help those states now. I mean, again, it's not necessarily SALT cap that's uncapped, but the SALT cap is now raised to $40,000. So the state and local tax deduction cap increasing back to $40,000 for joint filers, up from $10,000 limit. This is a win for homeowners and high earners in states like California, New York, and New Jersey, and Illinois. But it also shifts benefits upwards. The bigger your state tax bill, the more valuable this is. So this, while it helps the middle class and expensive areas, it's really more generous to the upper income households. For the federal government, it definitely means less tax revenue for blue state earners, a long overdue reprieve. I will also say that this is some of the stuff they're talking about in regard to pay-fors, right? Pay-fors, like how are we going, the new taxes. I'm talking about the new additions to the bill that are on top of their current TCJA. The current TCJA is, we know what it was. We lived on it since 2017. But these are new implementations that are going to come at a cost of future generations. So what we're talking about here, again, the SALT cap, $40,000. That's an increase. That's less tax revenue for the federal government. And again, that's a pay for, and it's going to be very expensive moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be any economic growth or what have you, what comes from that. But again, particularly from a revenue perspective, this is definitely a cost. Now let's talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. A small business owner like myself, and being an enrolled agent, like I mentioned, the QBI phase-in expansion. What changed? And I'm going to give you a little brief example. So let's talk about something that kind of flew under the radar. It was traditionally going to be increased to 23% from 20%, which is Section 199A. A lot of us business owners know it as qualified business income or QBI deduction, but they kept it at 20%. Now, the QBI deduction, aka the 20% pass-through deduction for business owners, a lot of people ask me, did they increase it? Nope, it is still at 20%, but here's what they did change, which definitely helps a lot of people. They made it more accessible by widening the phase-in range for high earners. So let me give you an example. Under the old law, if you're married and filing jointly, your QBI deduction would start phasing out around $364,200 and be completely gone by $464,200. That's a $100,000 phase out range. Under the new law, the same deduction still starts phasing out at $364,200, but it doesn't fully disappear until $514,200. So now it's a $150,000 window, more room to qualify, even at higher income levels. So what does this mean in real life? If you're a business owner making $475,000. Last year, you got nothing from the QBI. And this year, you might be getting a partial QBI deduction that can mean thousands of dollars back in your pocket. So while the percentages didn't increase, more people will now qualify, especially in the service-based businesses that are previously excluded. This is a small tweak with a big financial impact. So if you know how to plan around it, I would say contact your financial advisor, contact your certified as your CPA, and they can definitely help you see if you qualify for that, especially for those of you that missed out on this deduction last year. Very powerful move. So you may be getting some money back once this all kicks in. So as you know, we're talking about the BBB. We've talked about QBI. We've talked about SALT cap raises. We talked about bonus depreciation. And we also talked about the senior deduction. One thing I want to mention, and this is the last thing because this is new to the bill as well, is no tax on tips, right? And overtime. Overtime and tip income exemption. There's going to be a lot of upset people about this. A lot of upset people about this because there's caps. There's a lot of different moving parts to this, and it feels like a middle class win, but when you look underneath the table, underneath the planning opportunities here, it's a really small benefit, and under the bill, up to $12,500 in overtime and tip income is now exempt from federal income tax. Federal income tax is still subject to payroll taxation. There's going to be people that are going to be taxed on their benefits because they start phasing out at different levels. And they're going to say, hey, I thought this was all exempted from tax. No, because the more money you make, the less you're going to receive because you get the higher numbers. Of course, that taxation number starts to increase because there's less money because you're being pushed out or phased out of those income ranges. So it's important to understand what this all means. You got to get with a financial planner. You got to get with your certified public accountant to understand exactly how this impacts you, especially if you have a lot of overtime. So let's just say, hypothetically, let me give you an example. You're teaching, picking up summer shifts, or a service worker hustling double shifts. This is for you. But here's the catch. This only applies to federal income taxes. Still subject to payroll taxes, like I mentioned, like Social Security and Medicare. Still, it's a meaningful change. And it's one of the few provisions in the bill that clearly helps hourly and tip-based workers without a lot of legal complexity or planning needed. I said without a lot of planning needed. I would also say the planning is going to be needed for those who have a lot or a substantial amount of dollars coming from overtime or tipped work. We all know that a lot of people don't necessarily quantify their tips, and that's just been like that forever. But yes, it's important. And bottom line is, what does this mean for business owners? Are business owners going to take advantage of this by saying, okay, well, maybe I can afford to just give them more tipped work and pay them less? I mean, as a business owner, you can say, okay, we're going to give you less hours, or better yet, we're going to that $2.30 an hour that we've been paying you for the last couple of years, we're going to make that $2 or whatever. And now you're getting more money from tips. You should make more money from that because you're not getting taxed on it. Now, again, I'm not saying they're going to do that. I hope they don't do that. I hope that that's not the way that their minds work. But again, this is definitely a benefit for you guys in the space where you're doing like Uber or waitressing or something to that effect. So yeah, it's definitely going to help. So as you know, I like to keep these short. 10 to 15 minutes. And let's just recap on the 5 big takeaways. My 5 big takeaways from reading the bill. One, the seniors getting the $6,000 deduction. Again, great. And if you're married filing jointly, it's a $12,000 deduction. If you're 65 and older, that's fantastic. But it drains the Social Security trust fund that much more quickly. So that's going to be a headache for us moving in the future. 2, bonus depreciation is back, favoring large capital-heavy businesses. That's great, but again, a lot of our businesses who are small businesses in our country are not capital heavy businesses. So what I mean by that, we're not necessarily huge manufacturing entities where we're going to be depreciating large machinery projects off. A lot of us are 5 to 6 men operations, and we're operating probably in a service and or less capital machinery focused industries. Salt cap jumps up $40,000. That's going to help high earners in high tax states. New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California. KBI limits rise, letting more high income business owners claim the 20% deduction. That's going to be valuable, of course. Valuable for a lot of our consultants, financial advisors, people in qualified businesses. And finally, overtime tip and tip income is tax free, which is up to $12,500, of course, subject to phase outs, helping hourly workers directly. So again, big changes come at big costs with big questions. This big, beautiful bill might help your bottom line, but only if you plan for it. If you're unsure how these changes can affect you and your tax return, your business structure, or your future benefits, let's talk. I'm here to help you navigate not only just the headlines, because they can be very cloudy at times, but the real numbers behind the system. Thank you guys for listening to 9 Innings Podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. You have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@99capitalgroup.com. Send us your questions. Go to the website at www.99capitalgroup.com. Schedule an appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, engage, and also entertain. Follow us on all social media channels at 99cap or at MLB to CFP. We're talking about the big, beautiful bill. 5 takeaways I got, and I hope this has been a valuable use of your time. I hope this has given you a little bit of a additional insight on what the bill did. Now, there's more to this bill than just these five components. But again, I just wanted to talk about 5 key takeaways that I got. Thank you guys for listening. Stay humble, stay safe, my friends.